Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our FanDuel DraftKings Benny's Bats edition for Friday, July 8th. Got a big 15-game slate on tap tonight. There's a lot of big tournaments going on around the industry as well, so a lot of chances for us to make some money. We got a couple good pitchers on the mound, couple gas cans. You know, with the 15-game slate, there's a little bit of everything here, so let's get right into it. First game we're going to talk about, Chicago Cubs going up against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Jake Arrieta on the mound for the Cubs. I know he hasn't been as lights out lately as he has been at the beginning of the season, but left-handed bats are hitting 211 against him. Right-handed bats are hitting under 200, so the guy is still very, very tough on both right and left-handed hitters. I'm not taking any of the bats on this Pittsburgh team against them. I guess maybe a lefty like Gregory Polanco is probably in the best spot. But again, if lefties are only hitting 211 against them, you know, there's really no reason to mess around. Arrieta is one of the better pitchers on the mound today. He's definitely somebody that I would consider for, you know, cash or tournaments. Although, like I said, there are some other high-end options as well. The other side of this game, we got Francisco Liriano pitching for the Pirates. Right-handed bats hitting 286 against him this year with 11 home runs in 65 innings. He's not having one of his better seasons right now. You know, this Cubs team has a lot of good hitters, so I don't think this is going to be an easy spot for him. Guy like Ben Zobrist hits lefties very well, 389 WOBA, 178 ISO for him. Chris Bryant, 378 WOBA, 277 ISO, so I like both of those guys. You can look at guys like Javi Baez, you know, Wilson Contreras, the young catcher. I think both of these guys are in pretty good spots. You know, limited at-bats for the two of them, but they both have over 400 WOBAs and over 240 ISO, so all four of those guys are in good spots, the righties. And then even a lefty like Anthony Rizzo. Rizzo does very well in lefty-on-lefty situations, 367 WOBA, 202 ISO. So I definitely think stacking up the Cubs here today is a pretty good idea. Like I said, Liriano has struggled. He's not the guy that we know from years past. So I do think that Chicago put some runs up against them today. Next game we can talk about, we got the Angels going up against the Baltimore Orioles. This is a tough one. You got Matt Shoemaker on the mound, and he's actually been pretty good lately. 7 of his last 8 starts have been quality starts, and his improvement is due to the fact that his strikeouts are up right now, his ground balls are up, and his fly balls and home runs allowed, which have been a problem for him in the past, are both down. So as long as he can do that, he's going to be putting up some better numbers. So I do think that this, you know, turnaround that he's had this season is something that's real. I think it's definitely something we should, you know, keep an eye on. Now, right-handed bats do have a higher average and hit a couple more home runs against Shoemaker. So this is a tough matchup for him against this Baltimore team. The guy I actually like the most is Adam Jones. Adam Jones is 3 for 9 lifetime against him with 2 home runs. He's going to be leading off for this Baltimore offense. Reasonably priced right-handed bat going up against a pitcher that gives up, you know, like I said, a lot of hard contact to right-handed bats. So I do think Adam Jones is in play. And I also want to look at the other righties, guys like Machado and, you know, Mark Trumbo, who just keeps hitting home runs. I think both of these guys are also in pretty good spots here. You know, you want to look at a lefty like Chris Davis in this matchup, but Davis just really hasn't been producing much lately. You know, I know his price is starting to get discounted on a couple of the sites. If I was stacking them, sure, I would put Davis in there. But honestly, if I'm using one-offs, it's going to be these righties. Adam Jones, easily my favorite, probably followed by Trumbo and Machado. On the other side of this game, Ubaldo Jimenez is going to be pitching for the Orioles. Left-handed bats have a better average against him, more fly balls, more home runs. So left-hand is really the way you want to attack him. But right-handed bats are kind of solid against him too. You know, looking at this Angels team, there really aren't any left-handed bats that you want. You know, maybe Cole Calhoun, probably the best option you can get if that's what you're looking for. The guy that I really want to have some exposure to is going to be Mike Trout again. You know, 400 plus WOBA, well over 200 ISO score, even in righty on righty matchups. You know, he's got the ability to steal a base. He can hit you a home run, rack up multiple hits, score runs, get RBIs. I mean, you know, he's just an absolute stud when it comes to fantasy, filling up stat sheets left and right. He's really the only guy in his team I'm looking at. I know a lot of people have been playing CJ Cron lately. Cron is good in righty on righty matchups, so I guess he's a little bit interesting, but there are so many other options today that other than Trout, there's really nobody that I've been looking at. Next game we can talk about, we got Detroit going up against Toronto. J.A. Happ on the mound, the lefty for Toronto, and he's actually been really good in 3 of his last 4 starts. The other start was at Coors Field, so we can always excuse when a guy's one bad start lately has been at Coors. You know, right-handed bats have a higher average and hit more home runs against them. My problem here is that all the bats on Detroit are right-handed, and you got a lot of big right-handed bats that do well against left-handed pitching. Miggy and V-Mart, probably my favorite too, but, even guys like Kinsler, Castellanos, Cameron Maben, who's been hitting in the 2-hole. All these guys are right-handed bats that have pretty good averages and pretty good, numbers against left-handed pitching. So I think all these bats on Detroit are in play. I think it's going to be a tough spot here for Happ. Great hitters ballpark up at the Rogers Center in Toronto. So I really just don't see Happ having another good game today. I think this Detroit team is going to be able to put up some runs against them. On the other side of this game, I also think that Mike Pelfrey is going to get some runs put up against him. Left and right-handed bats are both hitting over 315 against him this season, so it really doesn't matter. He does have a low fly ball rate, though. He does get a lot of ground balls, so I'm not sure if we see a ton of home runs. He's a little bit of a paradox because he does throw a lot of ground balls, but at the same point in time, he has a little bit of an elevated home run rate. Basically, whenever Pelfrey makes a mistake, it gets hit hard. So if he makes a mistake, there is a chance that he can give up a home run. If guys put the ball in the air against them, a lot of times they put it in the air and they hit it pretty far. But at the same point in time, like I said, he does get a lot of ground balls as well. So, I guess you can look at some of these home run hitters. I'd probably be looking in the middle of the order on this Toronto team today. Josh Donaldson's been just absolutely on fire. He's a great hitter. Somebody will look at, 390 WOBA, 2-something ISO score against right-handed pitching. Same goes for Encarnacion, whose numbers are, power numbers are a little better. The WOBA's a tad below, but I still think he's like a 380, 375 WOBA kind of guy in righty-on-righty situations. And then Michael Saunders, the one lefty that they have, batting cleanup for them lately. He's been getting a lot of hits. He's been doing a lot of damage. And he's always up with men on base because Encarnacion and Donaldson tend to get on base in front of him. So those are the guys that I look at. I just don't think they have a big chance for like multiple home run games today, which I think is something you're going to need on a 15-game slate with so many options here. So I'm not going to go heavy on the Blue Jays, but I wouldn't mind using one or two of these guys as, one-offs on a tournament team or something along those lines. Next game we can talk about Cincinnati against Miami. Jose Fernandez on the mound for Miami. I mean, this guy's awesome at home. He's a shutdown pitcher against right-handed bats. He's got huge K upside. This Cincy lineup isn't really all that good. So I think Jose Fernandez in a great spot today. If you want to take bets against them, you're probably looking at the lefties, maybe like a Joey Votto or a Jay Bruce. But again, I mean, there are just so many softer spots that I don't think we really need to mess around with that today. The other side of this game, you got Dan Straley on the mound for Cincinnati. And despite the fact that he's giving up way too many walks, he actually hasn't been horrible this year. He has been able to keep teams a little bit off balance through 5 or 6 innings, I should say. And then the bullpen's kind of been letting them down at the end, which is a problem that we know that Cincinnati has. But like I said, Straley's actually been a little bit of a tough pitcher for opposing teams. He has gotten lit up once or twice recently, but you look at the rest of those starts, it's 5 or 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 hits, 1 or 2 or 3 walks, and a couple strikeouts. Really not getting lit up. I think you want to look at, excuse me. I think you want to look at the lefties against them. Derek Dietrich in a good spot, 379 WOBA, 192 ISO. I like him a little more for tournaments. He's pretty cheap and does have some home run pop, a little bit of upside. You can also look at Christian Yelich, more of a cash game play for me. The guy's batting around 300, WOBA 368, ISO only 149. Doesn't really have a lot of home run pop. Doesn't really steal bases, so doesn't really put up huge fantasy scores. But he has been a consistent guy for you. Does rack up a couple hits and RBIs and runs every game. I think you also have to look at Giancarlo Stanton right now. I mean, the guy's on a power surge. He's absolutely on fire. He's 5 for his last 7 with 4 home runs. So, after the beginning of the season when he was in that streak of, I forget what he had, like 30 strikeouts and 50 at-bats or something crazy like that, it seems like he's seeing the ball a little bit better right now, and he's hitting the ball hard. I mean, he's always hit the ball hard when he makes contact. So, like I said, Straley's not somebody that I'm overly concerned with. I do, prefer when you get a lefty to go up with Giancarlo Stanton, but the guy's been so hot right now, I think you got to at least consider him, especially for the tournament upside, because, I mean, in the last 2 games, he's hit 2 home runs in each of them, and 2 home run upside is something that can win you a tournament. So he's one of the few guys that has it. He's locked in right now, seeing the ball well. Definitely think we have to, at the very least, consider him for our tournament rosters. Next game we can talk about, New York Yankees at the Cleveland Indians. We got Corey Kluber on the mound. The guy's an all-star. He has strikeout upside. Left-handed bats do better against him. He's pretty much lights out the right-handed bats. So you look at that Yankee team, I mean, this is not a very good lineup. I guess Beltran is probably the best hitter they have numbers-wise, right around the 360 WOBA there. Brian McCann has a little bit of upside with the home run pop. But again, I mean, I don't really want to take guys against Kluber. Kluber's a very good pitcher, very likely to have a, nice strikeout game here, probably limit the damage. Left-handed bats are the way to go after him, and the Yankees do have a lot of lefties, but the lefties on the Yankees team this year just really aren't producing all that well. So, I think Kluber is a little pricey on most sites. He's probably not somebody I'm going to have a lot of exposure to, but I also don't want any exposure to the Yankees bats going up against them. The Yankees are throwing out Chad Green. Left-handed bats have a higher average against them. Does give up a couple home runs. Jason Kipnis, I think, is in a good spot. 373 WOBA, 179 ISO for the second baseman there. Francisco Lindor in the 3-hole, 350 WOBA is in an okay spot. Carlos Santana probably be leading off again today. 352 WOBA for him. Big 232 ISO score. He does have some power upside, and he has a high on base percentage. So people say, why are they leading off, Carlos Santana? But if he's going to be getting on base in front of guys like Kipnis and Lindor, that's pretty much what you want there. So, I don't have no problem with the fact that he's leading off. Yes, he doesn't have the speed. He's not going to steal any bases for you, but he does have home run upside. He is a high on base percentage guy, so you want to get as many at-bats for a guy like that as possible. And I do think it's a pretty good spot for him as well. Plus, he always goes low owned because at first base, everybody tries to spend up for the big studs. And I understand the reasoning behind it, but like I said, Santana I think is in a pretty good spot. Should go pretty low owned here, and I do like the matchup for him. Next game we talk about Tampa Bay at Boston. Boston's throwing out Sean O'Sullivan again, and this guy, I don't know how else to say it. He sucks. Right-handed bats hit him well. Left-handed bats hit him well. Tampa Bay does not do great against right-handed pitching. It's usually not the way you want to attack them. I guess righty on righty, I'd look at guys like Logan Forsythe and Evan Longoria. I hate the left-handed bats in this team. You got like Brad Miller and Logan Morrison, Corey Dickerson. But at the same point in time, O'Sullivan is that bad. So I think the way I would play this game, I'm not really looking to use these guys as one-offs, try to pick out a Tampa Bay bat to throw in there. But in the tournament, I definitely think it's okay to stack up Tampa Bay bats because, like I said, O'Sullivan is that bad. He might not even make it to the fifth inning. He could give up 5 or 6 runs in the first 4 or 5 innings of this game. And everybody just kind of getting a couple hits off him. There'll probably be a home run or 2 involved in there from somebody. This Tampa team does have a lot of power. They hit a lot of home runs. So, like I said, I think if I'm going to do anything here, it's stacking up these Tampa Bay bats, hoping that, O'Sullivan does kind of blow up and you get a big inning out of him. On the other side of this game, we got Chris Archer. Archer is not very good on the road, so that's a little bit of a knock against him. He does have a high walk rate and gives up a lot of hits. It's kind of like a roller coaster ride when you watch this guy. And the first inning of his last start is a perfect example. With no outs, he loaded the bases on a cheap hit, a solid hit, and a walk. And then he came back and struck out the side. So he struck out the next 3 batters. So I said it joking around, but if you're going to play Chris Archer, you basically play him and you don't watch the game because at the end of the game, I think he still wound up with, 20-something fantasy points and a pretty solid start. But you'll seriously have heartburn if you sit there and watch him as he pitches because he just walks way too many guys. He gets into 0-2 counts or 1-2 counts and then winds up just completely losing the plate and walking guys. It's maddening to watch this guy pitch. But again, he does have the strikeout upside, and at the end of the day, it's not bad. His high K rate is what saves him, but I don't think I love him against this Boston team. This is a lineup that has a lot of upside in it. You got a guy like Mookie Betts who's 4.16 lifetime against him, but he does have 2 home runs. And, that's the thing with Archer. He can give up a home run, and with all the walks and stuff, he's given up 2- and 3-run home runs when he gives them up. And those can absolutely kill your fantasy score. Xander Bogaerts is 6 of 16 lifetime against Archer as well, so he's somebody you can look at. And then David Ortiz is 12 of 31 lifetime with 2 home runs. Now, here's a guy with a 400-plus WOBA, 300-plus ISO since last year against right-handed pitching. Definitely think David Ortiz is in play here, one of the better options on the day. Next game we can talk about Washington against the New York Mets, and I'm not really looking to take any bats in this game. You got Noah Syndergaard going up against Steven Strasburg. So 2 of the better pitchers in the league, 2 of the better pitchers we've had so far this season. If you're worried about Syndergaard's arm and you think that, you can pick on him here today. This Washington team has been putting up some runs. I understand where you're coming from. This Mets lineup has been kind of weak. So Strasburg, maybe Cespedes in a righty-on-righty matchup, probably the best hitter that they have right now. Other than that, I'm not really looking to take anybody. I mean, Jose Reyes has been hot leading off for them since he came back in the lineup. But, I mean, do you really want to take a whole bunch of bats against Strasburg on a day where you got a whole bunch of gas cans you can choose instead? So, like I said, from both sides of this game, I realize there's some good hitters on both of these teams. Guys like Harper and Murphy, left-handed bats that, are not going to be easy outs for Syndergaard either. But I just don't want to take bats against these two pitchers. I think you have some much weaker pitchers on the mound and some much better spots for everybody. Next game we talk about, Minnesota against Texas. Kyle Gibson, left-handed bats have a higher average against him. He does have a low fly ball rate, though. He does get a lot of ground balls, tends to keep the ball in the yard. Although, like I said, he does get hit around a little bit. So I'd probably be looking at the lefties, guys like Sin-Soo Choo, 385 WOBA, 211 ISO for him. Guy like Nomar Mazara, 358 WOBA, 178 ISO. Guy like even Prince Fielder, 358 WOBA. Fielder has been hitting much better lately. Mazara's kind of on a downswing and Fielder's kind of on an upswing now. So if you're looking to put a second left-handed bat from Texas in your lineup, for me, it would probably be Fielder over Mazara at the moment, although Mazara has still been batting in the 3 hole and Fielder's batting in the 5 spot. So just keep that in mind. The other side of this game, we got Cole Hamels, the lefty on the mound. Hamels is a lefty. He's tough on left-handed bats. Right-handed bats have a higher average, more home runs against them. A lot of right-handed bats in this Twins team. So guys like Miguel Sano, 391 WOBA, 252 ISO. I think he's in a decent spot here today. Brian Dozier's been batting cleanup for this team, 362 WOBA, huge 247 ISO, especially for a second baseman. So that's a little bit interesting if you did want to go up against Hamels. You got Robbie Grossman, 379 WOBA, 175 ISO. He's become an integral part of this offense as well right now. So those are the guys I would take. But again, Hamels is a pretty good pitcher, not really somebody that I think it makes a lot of sense to pick on today. Next game, we got Atlanta Braves against the Chicago White Sox. Chris Sale is on the mound. So you got a dominant left-handed pitcher going up against the Atlanta Braves, which are historically bad against left-handed pitching. Now, the big knock on Sale this year has been that he's been trying to pitch to contact and he's not getting the strikeouts, so the fantasy score is not as high. And I understand all that. 13,500 on DraftKings today. It just seems way too expensive for me to pay for Sale. Again, as long as he's pitching to contact and not racking up 15 strikeouts. Now, with that being said, we know that Atlanta is historically bad against left-handed pitching, so this could be the game where he does rack up 12 to 14 strikeouts. But either way, I'm not taking any Atlanta bats. There is no reason to have any Atlanta bats in your lineup today, so we can just skip right over that. The other side of this game, we got Matt Whistler. Whistler has actually been much better in 2016 than he was in 2015. But much like 2015, left-handed bats are the way to attack them. Although left-handed bats in 2015 had hit like 300 against them. This year they're nowhere near that good, but it's still the way you want to go after them. We really don't have a lot of left-handed bats that I'm worried about in the Chicago offense. You got Adam Eaton up top. You got Melky Cabrera, switch hitter, batting cleanup. Outside of that, though, it's a very righty-dominant lineup. A guy like Jose Abreu is very good in righty-on-righty situations, but Whistler's been tough on righties as well this year. So, I'm not really a huge fan of taking anybody on this White Sox team here. Like I said, you want the left-handed bats, but it doesn't really give you a lot to work with. The next game is Oakland at Houston. Colin McHugh on the mound for Houston. Left-handed bats have actually hit him for more power, but right-handed bats have a high average against them as well. I think Josh Reddick is probably the best play here, although Reddick really hasn't looked great since coming off the DL. He does have a 367 WOBA, 187 ISO. He bats in the 3 hole for this order. Left-handed bat that hits right-handed pitching well. So the profile was in his favor, although, like I said, lately he has not been hitting well since he came off the DL. Danny Valencia, probably my favorite bat in a righty-on-righty situation. Like we said, McHugh gives up a high batting average, righty-on-righty. Valencia is a 360 WOBA guy in righty-on-righty situations. So he's proven that he can hit right-handed pitching this year, so I think I'd be okay rolling him out there. And then Stephen Vogt is somebody that has home run upside as a lefty. He's dropped in the order to the 6th spot right now, but like we said, McHugh does give up a lot of his home runs to left-handed bats. Houston, a very good hitter's ballpark, so if you're looking for a cheap option to take a flyer on, I think Stephen Vogt is definitely one of those guys today. The other side of this game, Daniel Mengden pitching for Oakland, and he's been really solid in 4 of his first 5 starts. My problem with him is he's getting a little pricey, especially over on DraftKings. Left-handed bats are the way you want to attack him. He's very tough in righty-on-righty situations. The problem I have is Houston has a lot of right-handed bats, and with Mangden being so tough on the righties, I don't see big games coming for Altuve and Correa and Springer up there towards the top of the order. I guess if I'm going to look at anybody on Houston, it's going to be the lefties. So maybe a guy like Kobe Rasmus. Luis Valbuena has been hot lately. You also have, Jason Castro, the catcher, even though he hasn't really been hitting. I think the left-handed bats with pop are the ones that profile to do the best. Mangden does have a pretty elevated fly ball rate to left-handed hitters. So I do think that one of these guys may be able to get into one and hit a home run off him today. But like I said, he's tough on those right-handed bats, so I don't think it's going to be an easy game for this Houston offense. The next game we have, Coors Field, Phillies against Colorado. You got Vincent Velasquez and Jonathan Gray on the mound for, the Phillies and Colorado respectively. Now, these are much better pitchers than the guys we had yesterday. So I could see this being a lower-scoring Coors Field game. Now, a lower-scoring Coors Field game is probably still a 6-4, 6-5 kind of game, but I don't think either one of these guys are gas cans, so I don't know if either one is going to get lit up. Left-handed bats is the way you want to attack Velasquez, but he's tough on righties, does have some strikeout upside. I like Blackman in this spot, 365 WOBA, 188 ISO. I like Cargo for 11 WOBA, 294 ISO. He's probably the best bat and somebody I think is going to be incredibly highly owned today, and rightfully so. He does very well against right-handed pitching. And then even Nolan Arenado is great in righty-on-righty matchups. 385 WOBA, 308 ISO score for him. Definitely somebody I think we need to consider. On the other side of this game, Jonathan Gray has been much better away from home, but this guy is a really good young pitcher. He was a top prospect, I think like a top 5 draft pick when he came out of either high school or college. Odubel Herrera, probably the only left-handed bat on this Phillies team that I really like. 360 WOBA for him, 150 ISO. He's shown us a little bit of home run pop. He can definitely steal some bases. He can rack up some hits, scores a couple runs. So I like Odubel. You got Cody Ashley batting in the 3-hole. You got Maikel Franco batting in the 4-hole. Both of these guys are probably decent spots to knock in a couple runs and get a couple hits today. This Philly offense just really doesn't inspire a lot of confidence from me. I can see this game ending maybe 6-3 or 7-4, something like that, with Philly losing by a couple runs and really not putting up a ton, even though they're at Coors Field. If there's a day to fade Coors Field, it's probably today because you got 2 good pitchers on the mound. It's probably a good thing in tournaments to try to find another way. In cash games, like I said to somebody who asked last night, when you have a day like this, you don't want to play Coors in tournaments because everybody's doing that. You play them in cash as your hedge, and then you try to find a different way in tournaments. Maybe you fade them all together, take the second or third option that you think will be really low owned, and hope we get like a 3-2 game in Coors Field, and the team that you pick puts up 11 runs. That's probably the best way to get a high cash in a tournament on a day like this, especially when you have games in Coors Field and that everybody's going to gravitate to it. Next game we talk about St. Louis at Milwaukee. Jimmy Nelson on the mound for Milwaukee. Left-handed bats hitting 300, over 300 against him last year. They've been a little bit better this year, but left-handers are still the way to go after him. Now, the problem that I have is you're losing left-handed bats on this Cardinals team, and they really don't have many of them left. I mean, Carpenter is on the DL, so maybe you have Colton Wong hitting up towards the top of the lineup. If you do, I guess he's a decent play. You got Brandon Moss, who's also on the DL, so maybe you see Matt Adams playing first base and hitting cleanup. If he's up there, left-handed bat, I think he's a decent play. That's kind of the way you want to go about it, though. I mean, you want lefties against Nelson, and there really aren't many left on this Cardinals team. So I don't know. I mean, normally I would like the Cardinals in this spot, but they might have a tough time today. On the other side of the game, you got Michael Wacha. Wacha's a reverse splits kind of guy. Right-handed bats have a higher average against them. Right-handed bats in righty-on-righty situations is probably what you're going to get here for the most part with this Milwaukee team because they are right-handed dominant. I do like Ryan Braun, 359 WOBA, 204 ISO. He's 4 of 6 lifetime against Wacha already, too. So, the fact that Wacha's a reverse righty-on-righty guy and Braun's a reverse righty-on-righty hitter kind of makes a lot of sense in this matchup for him. I also like Jonathan Lucroy. He's 4 of 12 lifetime against Wacha, 350 WOBA kind of guy. Not a huge guy that people have been using a lot this year, but he's still having a pretty solid year. He's batting right around 300. I mean, that's about all you could really ask for Jonathan Lucroy. Next game we're going to talk about is Seattle against KC. Iwakuma, high fly ball rate. Left-handed bats are the way you want to attack him. So the guys that we're looking at, probably Kendrys Morales, I guess, over Hosmer would be my favorite option here today. Morales is hot. He's got 9+ points in 8 of his last 10 DraftKings games. A bunch of big scores in the high teens and in the 20s as well. He's got more power than Hosmer does. And like I said, with Iwakuma being a fly ball pitcher that does give up home runs, especially the left-handed bats, I think I like Kendrys Morales a little more than I like Hosmer today. I don't think Hosmer's a bad play either. I mean, you're talking about a guy with a 390 WOBA against right-handed pitching. Like I said, he's more of a cash game play for me. So, he's a little bit more of a solid bet. Morales, I think, is the guy that has a little more upside. But they're probably the 2 favorite bats that I have. I mean, Iwakuma's a guy that usually keeps teams off balance, doesn't give up a lot. Go like 6 or 7 innings, probably give up like 2 or 3 runs, maybe a home run or 2. Not a lot of base runners, usually solo shots, which, again, if you're giving up solo shots, it doesn't really kill you, so it's okay. The other side of this game, we got Yordano Ventura, and I don't know, man. Sometimes this guy looks dominant. Sometimes this guy looks horrendous. He's gotten lit up lately in his last couple starts. The home runs have become a problem for him again. He's just given up way too many of them. Left-handed bats are better. Right-handed bats are okay, too. You got guys like Seth Smith, who's been on fire right now. 3 for 9 lifetime against Ventura, too, with 3 extra base hits. Robinson Cano, Seager, the left-handed bats, other guys you want to look at. But I even think you can look at a guy like Nelson Cruz, even though it's a righty-on-righty matchup. He just has so much power that he's going to be in play anyway. The Seattle team is one of the top 5 offenses in baseball right now, which I don't think a lot of people realize, against both right and left-handed pitching. And they actually hit right-handed pitching better. So Ventura has been known to, give up some decent hits to right-handed bats. Plus he struggles against lefties, and he's been walking guys, giving up home runs. I really feel like they're going to light up Ventura today. Next game we can look at, San Diego against the LA Dodgers. You got Scott Kazmir on the mound, who's actually been pretty good. 251 batting average allowed to right-handed bats, 10 home runs in 63 innings, so that's the way you want to attack him. He does have some big strikeout upside, though, which I think will work for him against the San Diego team. The problem is the San Diego team does actually hit left-handed pitching pretty well. You got guys like Myers and Kemp, who are the 2 biggest bats. Myers, 380 WOBA, 195 ISO, Kemp 377 WOBA, 265 ISO. 265 ISO. So Kemp's got a lot of power against left-handed pitching. I like both of these guys. Myers and Kemp both make a lot of sense to me. They're both guys that are going to be in play. Again, as much as I like Kazmir, I do think the San Diego team can get some hits off him. Even like a Melvin Upton Jr. has been great against left-handed pitching this year. Derek Norris, Yangervis Solarte. I don't think it's a soft spot for Kazmir. On the other side of this game, though, Andrew Kashner's pitching, and he's another one of those guys that just kind of sucks this year. Left-handed bats, guys like Corey Seager, probably my favorite play. Favorite shortstop play on the day. Seager, 404 WOBA, 244 ISO score. I love this guy. He just looks so calm at the plate and just waits, and he just waits for them to make a mistake, and he just drills a pitch into the gap just about every time he's up. It's really something special to watch right now. I mean, this kid's becoming a big-time player right in front of our eyes. The problem I have is he doesn't have a lot else on this team to help him out. The only other guy I'd really look at on this Dodgers team is probably Justin Turner. Turner, very good in righty-on-righty matchups, 369 WOBA, 206 ISO, hits right behind Seager in the 3-hole. These 2 guys have been doing most of the damage and a lot of the, the run scoring and the run driving in for this team. So those are the 2 guys that I think I would want some exposure to on the Dodgers. The last game for the day, Arizona against San Francisco. You got the lefty Pat Corbin on the mound for Arizona. Again, we talked about it. The Giants have lost a lot of their big right-handed bats. A lot of these guys are on the mend and not playing at the moment. The Matt Duffys, the Hunter Pences of the world. Really, the only guy I'm looking at on San Francisco here is Buster Posey. 384 WOBA, 212 ISO against left-handed pitching. Definitely in a good spot. Corbin is tough on the lefties, but you do have a guy like like Brandon Belt, who's good in lefty-on-lefty matchups as well, so he could be somebody you can take a look at. On the other side of this game, we got Jeff Samardzija pitching. Left-handed bats have really been knocking him around this year. 283 batting average, 7 home runs in 45 innings. I kind of like Jake Lamb a lot here today. His price is a little discounted. 368 WOBA, 223 ISO, 3 of 6 lifetime against Samardzija with a couple of doubles. Jake Lamb, definitely somebody I'd look at. Also really like Michael Bourne if he's hitting in the second spot. 9 of 20 lifetime against Samardzija with 4 doubles. So that's a pretty decent sample size that we'd have to take a look at. And then obviously, if you can fit in Paul Goldschmidt, even in righty on righty matchups, 394 WOBA, but 237 ISO. He is only 2 of 18 lifetime against Samardzija, though, so it's not like he's put up good numbers against them in the past. Like I said, I kind of like the lefties a little more here. Guys like Michael Bourne and Jake Lamb, I think, are in really good spots. So that sums it up as I'm losing my voice here at the end of this 15-game slate. Like I said, there's a lot of high-end pitching that's on the mound, so you're going to have to try to figure out what you want to do with your bets. If you want to try to stack up Coors Field, which is going to be a popular thing for people to do today, you're not going to wind up with the Chris Sale, Corey Kluber, Jake Arrieta, Jose Fernandez is in your lineup. I don't really love any of the low-end pitching. There's a couple guys that are a little bit interesting in the mid-tier, so make sure you take a look at Josh Kalachi's On the Bump article when that comes out today, kind of give you a little bit of a better idea of which ones of these pitchers you can fit in there. There is enough value in some of these other games where you can go and probably pay up for one of these high-end starters, put a mid-tier starter in there, and then still have enough pop in your bats where you got some guys. You're probably going to be sacrificing a lot of the Coors bats, but again, if you want the Coors bats, you're really going to have to go cheap at pitching, or you're going to have to punt 2 or 3 of your batter positions, and I don't think I'm going to do that today. So that's the way that I see it. Thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com, and as always, stay classy, DFS.